The deeper I study behavioral psychology and the art of engineering consent, the more I realize that this world is just a massive chessboard. Most of you are just pawns being moved around. You think that when you say yes to a deal, it is because of your own free will. You are wrong. The masters of communication have secretly installed that answer in your brain before they even opened their mouths. If you do not know the techniques I'm about to reveal, you are not just missing out on opportunities, you are a puppet in the hands of others, or a complex system you do not even see. Let us look at the hard truth. Most of you are killing your own chances from the very first second, because you are still playing by rules from the last decade. In the cutthroat and crowded job market of 2026, being overly polite is a death sentence for your career. When you say things like, "May I have a few minutes of your time?" or "Would the company consider my resume?" you are lowering your status to a beggar. You are creating massive psychological pressure on the other person. That pressure is the obligation to make a decision. Biologically, the human brain is extremely lazy. A yes or no question forces a long audit process. They have to wonder who you are, if you are trustworthy, and if they are even free. It is too much trouble. The fastest way for them to relieve that pressure is a simple headshake. You just gave them a 50-50 chance to delete you from their life with one single word. That is not communication, that is tactical suicide. Why is the illusion of choice the ultimate weapon in 2026? Look at the TikTok or neural feed algorithms you watch every day. They do not ask if you want to watch a video, they give you 2 or 3 choices they know you will like. You pick one and you feel like you're in control. In behavioral psychology, this is called the double bind. When you offer choice A and choice B, the brain of the other person immediately shifts to which one should I pick, instead of should I even pick one. You have secretly moved the goalposts from evaluating your value to simply checking a schedule. Real-world data shows that in high-level Silicon Valley negotiations this year, candidates who assume consent have a 74% higher response rate than those who use closed questions. You are removing cognitive friction for them. You are not making them think, you're only making them choose. Look at the story of Alex. Alex is an artificial intelligence design graduate struggling to find a spot at a top tech firm in Austin. Alex sent 50 emails ending with, "If you think I'm a good fit, I would love an interview." The result was 0, not a single reply. I told Alex to stop because he was being a nuisance. I told him to redesign his power dynamic. Alex changed his strategy. He targeted the creative director and sent a short product demo with a specific closing line. "I will be in your office area next week to discuss optimizing this user interface. I'm free Tuesday morning at 10 or Wednesday afternoon at 2. Which time works better for your busy schedule?" The result was a reply in 15 minutes. "Tuesday does not work, but come by Wednesday afternoon." Do you see what happened? That director never actually said yes to meeting Alex, he just chose the path of least resistance. But in the end, Alex got exactly what he wanted. That is the art of engineering consent. To apply this right now to your next interview or negotiation, follow this framework. Step 1, the assumption. Always act like their agreement is a given because your value is undeniable. Do not use the word if, use the word when. Step 2, the bifurcation. Offer 2 choices that both lead to the result you want. Pro tip, put the option you actually want second. The recency effect makes people more likely to pick the last thing they heard. For example, should we sign a 3-month trial contract to prove my key performance indicators, or would you rather go straight to a full contract to save time on onboarding? Step 3, add a perceived benefit. Give them a reason why choosing either option is good for them. Say something like, "to save you time," or "to keep your project on schedule." Remember, beggars wait, But masters set the stage so the other person walks into the trap called agreement. But be careful, designing choices only gets you through the door. To make them truly committed and unable to back out, you need a much stronger psychological hit. You need something that triggers their fear of loss. I call this the invite the no technique. Have you ever felt a chill when a salesperson smiles too wide and asks if you want to save money today? Admit it, in 2026, the word yes has become one of the most expensive and scary words in the world. In a world where privacy is dead and artificial intelligence hunts for your attention, a yes means a commitment, a cost, or a burden. When you try to force a yes, you trigger psychological reactance. Their brain goes into defense mode. They feel cornered. They are afraid of being scammed. Your fatal mistake is thinking that agreement is the finish line. No, agreement is just the result of the other person feeling safe. And the secret is that people only feel safe when they have the right to say no. When they say no, they feel in control. They are protecting their territory and their ego. If you are still hunting for forced yeses, you will only get empty promises and secret resentment. Why is this technique exploding in American culture this year? Because Gen Z and Gen Alpha are tired of obvious manipulation. They worship autonomy. In behavioral psychology, asking a no-oriented question lowers cortisol levels in their brain. When you ask, "Do you object to?" or "Would it be crazy if?" you are giving them a gift, the power to refuse. But here's the brain hack. When they say, "No, I do not object," they are logically saying yes, but psychologically, they feel like they made a protective decision. Data from negotiations driven by artificial intelligence shows that starting with no-oriented questions keeps the other person's heart rate steady. It makes conversations last longer and triples the chance of a real deal. I have a friend named Sarah. Sarah is a young freelancer trying to close a virtual community management contract for a major brand in New York. The marketing director was a shark who was used to saying no to dozens of pitches every day. Instead of sending a flashy email about increasing revenue, Sarah sent one text message. "Would it be totally unreasonable if I asked for 5 minutes to show you a hole in your current campaign that your competitors are exploiting?" That director replied immediately, "No, it is not unreasonable. Send it over." Do you see the power here? If Sarah asked if he wanted to see it, he would think she was just another salesperson. But when she asked if it was unreasonable, he said no to prove he was open-minded and smart. Boom, the door was wide open. Sarah did not beg, she gave him permission to say no so she could get a yes. Stop using questions that start with "do you" or "are you." Replace them with the framework used by the Federal Bureau of Investigation Negotiators. Instead of asking if they are free, ask if it is a bad time to chat. They will say no, and that's when they are most ready to listen. Instead of asking if they agree, ask if they object to this path to optimize results. When they say they do not object, they have signed a mental contract without feeling forced. Use the strategic withdrawal. If they are ghosting you, send this killer text. "It seems like this project is no longer a priority for you." That hits their fear of loss and their status. They will rush to explain why they are not giving up on you. Remember, no is the start of a real conversation, not the end. When you allow someone to say no, you are rolling out a red carpet of trust. But engineering a no is just the opening act. You need to turn that moment of agreement into an unbreakable habit. That's when we use the foot in the door technique. It's a consistency trap that makes it painful for them to refuse you once they have stepped inside. Most of you fail because you try to close the deal on the first date. You want a 6-figure salary or $1 million project right away. That's not ambition, that's psychological naivety. The fatal mistake today is believing in explosive cold outreach. You send a massive message to a chief executive officer on LinkedIn asking for career advice. You ask them to spend 30 minutes on a coffee date. You are asking for a massive investment in someone who has zero value to you. The result? You get seen and blocked. Why? Because the brain doesn't like big risks. Is wired to save energy. A big ask from a stranger is a threat to their time. You are asking them to climb a mountain before they even know your name. You are trying to sell a marriage before the first date. Why is the foot in the door so effective in 2026? It is all about a glitch in the brain called cognitive dissonance. Humans have an unconscious obsession with keeping their current actions consistent with their past image. When someone agrees to a tiny favor, what I call a low-stakes commitment, they accidentally change their internal identity. They tell themselves that they are the kind of person who helps people. Once that label is stuck, they are caught in the consistency trap. If you follow up with a bigger request, saying no causes psychological pain. Saying no would mean admitting they are inconsistent or not as kind as they thought. To avoid that discomfort, the brain forces them to say yes to protect their own ego. You do not have to convince them, you just let them convince themselves that they want to help you. Look at Jordan, a freelance creator wanting to work with a big studio in Los Angeles. Instead of sending a huge portfolio, Jordan did something clever. He sent a 2-sentence email. "I'm finishing a study on visual trends for 2026, and I love your color palette on Project X. Would you mind if I cited your studio as an inspiration in my article?" This is an impossible ask to refuse. It is tiny and it flatters them. They replied immediately saying they would be happy to help. Boom! Jordan's foot was in the door. 2 days later, he sent a second request. "Thank you for the help. The article is doing great. I have a small idea to optimize that palette for virtual reality. Would you object if I sent a 15-second demo for you to check out?" Because they already helped him once, the studio felt they had to stay consistent with their role as a supporter. They watched the demo, they were impressed, and they invited him in. Jordan never asked for a meeting. He led them through a chain of small yeses until the contract was the only logical next step. Never ask for what you really want at the start. Build a consensus staircase. Step 1. The micro-ask. Make a request that takes less than 30 seconds. Ask to cite them or ask for a quick link. Get that first act of help. Step 2. Identity reinforcement. Send a sincere thanks and tell them how much their help mattered. Lock in that helper label. Step 3. The pivot. Make your real request as a natural extension of the first one. Remember, you do not need to be the strongest person in the room. You just need to make the other person stay loyal to the good image you painted of them. But keep a cool head. Using consistency is an art, but for total submission, you must solve their biggest fear. This is the deepest secret of power psychology. Stop for a second. This is where we peel back the final layer. If you think these techniques were the peak, you are wrong. What I'm about to say is something 99.9% of books will not touch because it is too raw. The fatal mistake that gets you a cold rejection is trying to prove your own value. You talk non-stop about how good you are or how great your resume is. But in 2026, no one cares about you. They only care about how they look and feel when they are around you. When you beg for agreement, you make them the gift giver. And gift givers have the power to say no. You are making yourself a product for them to appraise, and they will usually price you low. The deep dive is the art of alter casting. You are stealing the right to define the other person's value. This works because people in 2026 fear being seen as a hypocrite more than they fear death. When you link your request to the core values they try to maintain, you create a psychological trap with no exit. You are not asking for help, you are giving them a chance to prove who they are. If they refuse you, they are refusing the best version of themselves. To avoid feeling like a bad person, they have to say yes. Imagine negotiating with a manager who prides himself on being an innovative leader. If you ask him to approve a risky project, he will find 100 reasons to say no. But if you say,
I brought this to you because I know you are one of the few leaders here with real vision who is not afraid to break old rules.
Breakthrough. Others might be afraid of the risk, but for someone like you who prioritizes long-term results, I know you will see the value. Boom. You just locked him in a cage called the breakthrough leader. If he says no, he admits he is just as timid as everyone else. His ego will not let that happen. He will say yes to protect the label you just pinned on his chest. That is not a negotiation. That is voluntary submission to save his self-respect. To do this without looking manipulative, follow these 3 steps. Step 1. The halo scan. See how they want to be seen. Are they proud of being fair, smart, or bold? Step 2. The moral anchor. Before the request, state that value as a fact. Say, I came to you because I know you value transparency. Step 3. The mission bridge. Make saying yes the only way for them to fulfill that value. Now saying yes is a reward for their ego. You have made it so they cannot say no, because saying no is like slapping their own face. From my experience in million-dollar deals, here is a dark tip few people dare to use: the power of silence. After you drop that identity frame, stop. Be absolutely silent. In psychology, whoever cannot handle the pressure of the quiet and speaks first loses. Let them struggle with the silence until they say yes to relieve the tension. The master of the game is not the one who talks the most, it is the one who controls the breathing of the room. You have just thrown a perfect psychological punch. You framed their identity and designed the choice. And then what do? You start explaining. You talk to fill the gap, and that's when you fail. The biggest amateur mistake is the fear of silence. We call this the social anxiety gap. When a conversation goes quiet for more than 4 seconds, 95% of people start to panic. You feel insecure. You think you said something wrong. To stop the tension, you start talking. You say, "What I mean is," or "The price is negotiable." Congratulations, you just threw away your leverage. The moment you speak to fill the gap, you send a biological signal that you are weak and desperate. Whoever speaks first after a closing question is begging. In 2026, silence is a nuclear weapon. We live in a world of constant noise and notifications. When you pull that away, you create a psychological vacuum. Nature hates a vacuum, and so does the human mind. The other person will feel a weight on their chest. They will wonder why you are not talking and what you know that they do not. In tech hub negotiations, silence is a psychological torture. It forces them to face their own insecurity. They will eventually say whatever they need to say to break the pressure, and usually that's the concession you wanted. I saw this in an artificial intelligence startup acquisition. The corporation offered $2 million less than expected. The founder did not argue. He just looked the chief executive officer in the eye, nodded like he was thinking, and stayed silent. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes passed. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioner. The chief executive officer started fidgeting and drinking water. Finally, he cracked. He said, "Fine, if we add stock options and raise the base by 1.5 million, how does that sound?" $2 million were created out of thin air. Silence is profitable. To master this, use the 7-second rule. Count to 7 in your head after a big question. No filler words. Keep soft eye contact. Control your breathing. Wait for the crack. Wait for them to speak first. Remember, the one who knows when to be quiet holds the power of life and death. Mastering silence and identity framing is how you win, but be careful. These techniques can backfire if you do not know how to defend yourself. Are you sure you will not be manipulated by a pro using dark body language to crush you before you even speak? There's a truth about how top bosses use eye contact and distance to make you submit without a word. I analyzed those danger signals in this video. Do not go into a negotiation without your armor.
Click now before you become a victim of what you just learned. Being able to stop someone from saying no is just the beginning, but all these tools are useless if you cannot see the traps others are setting for you. We're talking about real predators who use dark body language to make you feel like you are winning while they lead you to the slaughter. I exposed those techniques in this video. Do not be a skilled prey. Click now before your next negotiation.